We're going to talk about the cask and shan, bandage. Does it mention in there like about when you're wearing light socks where you can see through your feet?
Yeah, light socks is mentioned.
And to do something quickly upstairs and I'm coming back down for the lesson, but if you do cover it, fingers, you can tell me the answers after.
Yeah, I'll show you. I showed the brother earlier today as well.
What's the the great debate about holes in the socks, because I've heard it's fine.
As long as the majority of the area is covered.
Okay, sure. Does it mention as well the ankle? Because you know what, I was told.
Well, when we asked my sheikh about the ankle socks, he said if it doesn't cover the part that's wajib for you to wash, then you can't. Because you have like ankle socks that are like they are just on the sole of the foot, and you have some that come up to ankle, some that cover the ankle.
Yeah.
I think it has to cover
the whole ankle.
I don't know. I don't know where you put it.
The last one was asking.
Yeah, for the book Munya to Sajid.
Munya
to Sajid.
Munya to Sajid.
Yeah. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه ومن سار على سبيله إلى يوم الدين ومن بعد. So, in continuing from where we left off last lesson, we mentioned that we will talk about al-mas'h al-khaffayn, yani wiping over the socks, and we also mentioned that talk about the bandage and the cask and the likes. Okay, we will try to include that in today's conversation, inshallah ta'ala, in understanding some as mentioned by the fuqaha, the scholars of fiqh regarding this. From next week, inshallah, we will start to talk about fiqh of siyam. We'll pause at where we are and go to fiqh of siyam in preparation for Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala, and then we'll come back to where we left off from. Okay. So, of the things that is mentioned, the author, he mentions فصل يجوز المسح على الخفين لمحل فرض وإمكان مشي بهما عرفا وثبوتهما بنفسهما وإباحتهما وطهارة عينهما وعدم وصفهما البشرة فيمسح مقيم وعاص بسفره من حدث بعد لبس يوما وليلة ومسافر سفر قصر لم يعس به 3 بلياليهن فلو مسح في سفر ثم أقام أو في حضر ثم سافر أو شك بداء المسح لم يزد على مسح. So I mentioned that it is permitted to wipe over the khufs, the leather socks, and also we're going to say socks in general. We're going to say socks in general. It's permissible to wipe over the socks in general if the following 7 conditions are met according to the author here. And the first of them he mentions wearing them after complete purification with water, i.e. a complete purification, i.e. wudu and ghusl with water, either wudu or ghusl with water. Then he mentions concealing the obligatory area, i.e. when the socks you're wearing have to cover the obligatory area that is to be washed. So ankle socks, if they go to the top of your ankle, like just above your ankle, then that's permissible to wipe over. Some say if it's underneath your ankle, then no, because it doesn't cover the obligatory part of your foot to be washed. Also, having the ability to walk as per custom in them. They hold themselves. As socks, they have by themselves, okay? And they have to be permissible and tahir, and that they do not reveal the skin. So this is of the things that is mentioned, but we'll mention what some of the ulama mentioned regarding this in explanation. After wearing them, both the resident and period of a day and a night. Okay. Yeah, the signal keeps cutting in and out, I understand. The traveler on a journey which is not sinful in nature, of sufficient distance to shorten prayer, is to wipe for 3 days and their nights. And if someone were to wipe, travel and settle as resident and then travel, or doubted when the wiping period began, then they are not to exceed the wiping period of the resident, i.e. 1 day and 1 night. Now, when it comes to what is mentioned here, it says, جوز المسح على الخفين, is permissible to wipe over the khuffain, and the khuffain is the leather socks. Okay, but he says وَنَحْوِهِمَا, and anything that is and that which is similar to it. And that's what they go into mention in terms of socks that are from other than leather, that are from cotton, from wool, and other than this. And that's because in a hadith as Hasan and Sahih it mentions أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم توضأ ومسح على الجوربين والنعلين. That he mentions that the Prophet ﷺ made wudu and he wiped over socks and sandals. Socks and sandals. And that is in the Ahmad wa Abu Dawood wa Tirmidhi. As mentioned, that hadith is Hasan Sahih, also Ibn Majah. And it mentions that the permissibility of wiping over socks, and we say socks that are not leather, when we say socks, we're talking about socks that are not leather. This has been narrated by 9 of the Sahaba, 9 of the companions. 9 of the companions mentioned that it's permissible to wipe over socks. And he mentions that there's 7 conditions that it's permissible to wipe over the socks. And the first one they mentioned that you wear them after having made purification. And this is also taken from the hadith of Mughira ibn Shu'bah. He mentioned كنت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في سفر فأهويت لأنزع خفيه. He mentions that I was on a journey with the Prophet Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم. I wanted to take off his socks for him. فقال دعهما فإني أدخلتهما طاهرتين فمسح عليهما. So he said to him, leave them, for I had entered into them in a state of purity. I wore them upon purity, and he wiped over them. So this showed the permissibility of wiping of the socks based on having already made tahara beforehand. He said, don't take them off because I wore them in a state of purity. Then he wiped over them when he made wudu again. So he mentions فغسل رجلا ثم أدخلها الخف قبل غسل الأخرى خلع ثم لبس بعد غسل الأخرى ليكون لبسهما بعد كمال الطهارة. Here in this it mentions, so for example, if he washes his foot and then his sock, before washing it again, he takes off the sock and then wears it again after the second washing, then this is to be upon complete tahara. But what is mentioned, Islam says, لا يشترط تقدم كمال الطهارة لأنه يصدق عليه أنه لبس الخفين على الطهارة فلا يلزمه خلع الخف في الصورة السابقة. So of the things that some mention, that you have to if you break the wudu, you have to, after mas, you have to take the sock off, make wudu again, and then wipe over it. He said, no, that's not the case. To purify yourself again. Like, you wipe over them, and it's not a condition that you have to take them off and then make wudu and then you can wipe over them again. La. Also, the second condition, سترهما لمحل فرد. It mentioned that it has to cover the obligatory part of the foot that is to be washed. فخرج بذلك ما لا يستر محل الفرد لقصره كالخف المقطوع أسفل الكعبين فلا يمسح عليه باتفاق الأئمة واختاره شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية. So it mentions this is ankle socks. The socks that are ankle socks that are below the ankle, then it's not permissible to wipe over this sock. The ankle sock below the ankle. If you have the ankle sock that is, it covers the ankle, then you can wipe over this. But if it's below, you cannot wipe over it. And that is in agreement with the Imam of Fiqh. You have those who say, if the sock is torn, has holes, and then the likes, it's not permissible to wipe over it. But what seems to be a stronger opinion, and also what Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah mentioned, is that it's permissible to wipe over the sock that has holes in it as long as it's still a sock. I.e., you might have a sock that the hole is so big you don't call that a sock. All the toes are out, and it's like up to halfway. It's like, why are you even wearing it? It's not doing anything for you. Okay, so if it's still to the level where it can be considered a sock, where it just might have a small hole here and there, okay, then it's not a problem. But if it's like a hole so big, all of the toes are out, it's halfway on the foot, then like, you can't wipe over this sock. The third condition you mentioned, that you're able to walk in them according to customs. Like if you can walk in a sock, whether that is from leather, wood, steel, and the likes, then it's going to be considered something that covers the foot and you're able to walk in it. But the reality is, because it mentions, if it's not something that is common, like you don't find anyone wearing wooden socks. It's made out of wood or steel. But with this, if a person did and they were able to walk in it, then they can wipe over it. They could wipe over it. Also, as mentioned, the author says that they have to be able to hold themselves in their place. If you have to tie something to it to hold it in its place or the likes, then it mentions, the author says that you're not allowed to wipe over it. Ibn Taymiyyah says, as long as it's still going to be considered to be a sock, even if you tie a string to the top of it, then you're allowed to wipe over it. You're allowed to wipe over a place by themselves. If you tied something to it to hold its place and you still call it a sock, then it's no problem. Of the things that is also mentioned, they have to be permissible. Now, this is something of discussion among the ulama. Cotton socks is fine to wipe over. Cotton socks is fine. As mentioned by the author, cotton socks is fine. And there are a number of the Sahaba that had given permissibility in doing so. So here, it says ibahatuhuma, they have to be permissible, they're not stolen. They're not stolen, okay? Because they mentioned if it's stolen, it's not permissible to wipe over it. Just like water, they said it's not permissible to use water that was stolen when we spoke about water. But we said the opinion is, that's more correct, is that it's permissible, i.e. but you're sinful. Like if you wiped over stolen socks, your wudu is correct. You still have made tahara, but you're sinful for the stealing of the socks. If you stole water and made wudu with the water, your wudu is correct, but you are sinful for what? Stealing the water. Also,
I'm not sure if it's right or not, but when they say the socks is under the Ka'ib,
I was mentioning, yeah, above the ankle is
I
fine.
can't hear you, sorry.
Yeah, above the Ka'ab is fine. But underneath, they say no.
Underneath.
Yeah, because it's not covering the obligatory.
Question. With that ruling that you just said now, if the wudu is still valid but still sin,
They're sinful.
yeah, is that ruling applied to anything else?
The socks.
Now, for example, let's say you steal money and then you use that money to provide for your family, is that the same ruling?
It's haram.
But you still get rewarded, not
La, no reward. La. You have one for war. So it's permissible to rob and the likes. They have this misguided ideas. So they say you can steal money from them and kuffar and the likes, and you can proclaim it. Tell everyone, I'm in war with you. I'm going to rob you. Your money, everything is halal for me. Don't keep it a secret and go to nightclubs and say, I'm going there because I'm going to rob people. Because it's halal, because they're kuffar. La, that's not correct. This is dalala. This is clear misguidance. You see?
Some they say ghanima, Sheikh.
No.
Says ghanima.
It's far, yeah, but it's not. This is dalala. For example, someone asked me one time, they said, if I can give it to my family as sadaqah. When I looked into it, the ulama mentioned, you have to return it back to the person you stole it from. If you're not able to do that, then you give sadaqah on their behalf with that money. I.e., the sadaqah, the intention is for them. So they will get the reward, not you. You see? And that's...
Sheikh, حتى أموال الربا, you can't do sadaqah with the
No.
with the riba money.
No.
Yeah. So riba money and the haram.
And because that's because it mentions إن الله طيب لا يقبل إلا طيبا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best, is the purest. He does not accept anything that except that is what? Pure, halal. So you can't give sadaqah from haram. You see, it won't be accepted from you. Wallahu a'lam.
Okay, destroy the Muslim, but they came with something, money with them.
Who? Talking about any rules that are not for us here.
No, I talk about if they are not a Muslim, but they came and attack.
No, I'm saying you have to ask the people knowledge back home.
No,
Trust me, for me, people that are not from the lands of different people don't speak about their affairs. Why? Because I don't know the reality. You see, it has to be seen. It has to be known. So for you to rate it, you have to go back to the people of knowledge of your place, because they will know. The people of knowledge of the Sunnah. But in terms of the issue we don't want to go into, is it halal, the money and these things. We're not going into it.
No, and what I'm saying, if they come and attack you physically, they are saying, if they are Muslim, you have to take what they have.
But I don't understand, what's the question?
All that I'm saying, then you able to conquer them, if you take what they came with.
No, but this,
About ghanima.
yeah, but this is different. That's what I'm saying. This is delicate. It's not a light issue. You see? Because that's what I'm saying. It's going to go back to the reality of the situation. And the people of that country where it's happening, if the likes of these things happen, they will give the fatwa of what is to be done. You see? But I'm saying we have people in the UK who say this is a land of war because they're non-Muslim. But doesn't mean because they're non-Muslim it's a land of war. What's the... When the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ sent the companions for the first hijrah, where did they go?
Habash.
Habasha. Was that a Muslim land?
No.
Was it Dar al-Harb? No. For us to say now, because the normal person who's not a Muslim, they're not your enemy, you're not at war with them. Rather, you have an obligation to call them to Islam, not to steal from them. You give them da'wah. You see? That's the reality. But unfortunately, people follow their desires. They follow their desires and they look for any sheikh of dalala who's going to say it's permissible. And if they hear someone who's considered to be a sheikh, in inverted commas, who says it's permissible, they will dismiss anyone from who's credible people of knowledge who say otherwise. Wadah? So in terms of these issues, we want to keep it restricted to the mas'ala. Why? Because not all rules can be applied across the board. Sometimes there are things that are mushtaraka that are shared, but some things they have more specific dawabit, any more specific principles for that. The issue here is, for example, if I stole socks and I was wearing socks, can I wipe over them? Yes, you can, but you're sinful. Why? Because you have stolen them. So you do the action, but you still are in sin. Just like if I make wudu with stolen water, is my wudu valid? That's what we're talking about. Is it valid, the fact that I've done this? It's valid, but you are what? Sinful. It's valid, but you are sinful. Also, taharatu aynihima, they also have to be pure. They cannot be impure. If they're impure, then there's no wiping over them. They say there's ijma in that, there's consensus, there's no difference of opinion in that. عدم وصفهما أي الخفين نحوهما البشرة, that they do not expose the skin. And this is talking about thin socks. So those who say you cannot make, like for example, they like, but what it mentions, Shaykh Uthaymeen rahimahullah also says, يجوز المس عليهما ما دام الاسم باقيا عليهما. As long as they are still referred to as being socks, then it's permissible to wipe raqiq, whether they are thick or light. If they're light, thin socks, then you can't wipe over them. The issue is now, the issue we have is when people make this a thing of war. And some people will treat as if you are a kafir if you wipe over your socks. This is not correct. This is not correct. A person follows the evidence. You see? And if you have the Sahaba wouldn't do an action out of their own desires. Example. He said something that was permissible for them to do. So you don't say because this madhab says no, you're not allowed to, that you make it binding and compulsory upon other people. No. But you have difference of opinion.
Sheikh, if you have wudu, if you have wudu already and you're in the masjid, you still got the wudu.
No.
And I see some people, even they still got the wudu, they go and they do masah.
They might be doing tajdeed al-wudu. Tajdeed al-wudu is sunnah. Even if you haven't broken your wudu.
So when you walk out, then it will be like a dusk and something like this, right? But you take off your shoes. For example, sometimes I pray Dhuhr at home and then I come to pray Asr here. I still got the same wudu. And I had to go for do masah or no?
No.
No, yeah?
No. You're only going to make masah if you broke your wudu. Only if you broke your wudu.
But but you're not gonna do mash only. If you broke your wudu, you have to do wudu.
Yeah,
again.
whole wudu.
Whole wudu.
And then
mash.
mash.
And then
No.
mash. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of, there's many hadith regarding the permissibility of it. The Shia, they say there's no wiping over the socks. The Shia. الرابع لا يرون المس. No. And this is why the mas'ala of wiping over the socks is mentioned in the books of Aqidah. And it's a fiqh mas'ala. But it's mentioned in the books of Aqidah. Why? Because it became a sign of the Rafidah. They don't believe in wearing the socks at all. They do not accept it at all. So it's a sign they're known for this. They become known for this. Okay, this is why it's mentioned in the books of Aqidah of Ahl Sunnah, the possibility of masah al-khuffayn, wiping over the socks. Also, what is mentioned, what is better, a person wiping over the socks or taking them off and making wudu? You think taking them off is better? Who disagrees?
No, it's better. It's better.
Why is it better to wipe over?
Maybe simple. Make it easy.
Because of the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions, إن الله يحب أن تؤتى رخصه كما يكره أن تؤتى معصيته. Allah loves that people take His concessions just as He hates that people fall into His disobedience. So the concession is wiping off the sock. Allah gave us His concession. Allah let you do it. So it's better than making wudu. Why? Because it's a rukhsa. This is a concession from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah loves that you take His concessions. Now, you have those who say that it's better to make wudu. But it's better because a person takes the rukhas of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it also facilitates a taysir, yani making things easy. Now, raf al-haraj, removing hardship and difficulty from people. Of the things that are also mentioned regarding this, we've mentioned wiping over the socks, whether they're leather or other than this. We've also mentioned, we haven't mentioned the time period. So basically, if you're a resident, have a day and a night, a 24 hours, if you need to make wudu. When does the time start?
Fajr.
From Fajr?
No.
Fajr.
From when you make wudu, it's gonna start.
From when you make wudu?
Yeah.
So you have two opinions so far. We have from Fajr. From when you make wudu, we're going to make Jam' al-Aqwal. We're going to gather all the opinions of the fuqaha of Kuwait and ICT Masjid.
No, from the first wudu.
From the first wudu, from when?
From the time you make wudu
From the time you make wudu?
up to the 24 hours from the next time,
And so, okay.
it's gonna start.
When you wipe. So when you do masah,
No, when you intention.
when you make the intention to do masah,
Yeah.
you're going to wipe from then. Okay, that's a third opinion.
Sheikh, I want to ask you only. My question is, always my first wudu is the proper.
Yeah.
But can you do the first wudu with mash? Is what?
Abadan.
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 Yeah, always you have to have the first wudu.
No.
And then if you was. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, so I do that.
No. So we have three opinions. From Fajr, from the first wudu, from when you make intention to do masah. What's another opinion? When you put the sock on, as soon as you wear the sock, that's the fourth opinion. When you break your wudu, that's the fifth opinion.
Sheikh, when you put the sock on.
When you put the sock on, that's the same opinion
Yes,
then.
yes.
Okay.
I changed my mind.
So we've got how many opinions so far? 5. Let's keep going.
24 hours this time to start the Maghrib.
For Maghrib,
The day start Maghrib.
when does the 24 hours of wiping over the socks start?
Yeah, the day start the Maghrib.
At Maghrib time.
Which say start the Maghrib, the day 24 hours.
So if I want to wipe over my socks, I've got 24 hours. When does the 24 hours start?
You wear socks when you're gonna start work or you're going out from home. So
But what if I work night shift?
yeah,
Before
no.
sleeping.
Unless if you sleep. If you sleep, then
From Isha. Okay, so opinion number 6.
Before sleeping.
منقضات الوضوء.
Yeah, you can.
منقضات الوضوء.
When you break the wudu.
When you break the wudu.
That's someone said that already. The 24 hours start from the first time you wipe the sock.
The first time you
Subhanallah.
wipe the sock,
The first time you make mess is when you start the 24 hours.
it's not the first time you do the proper.
No.
Oh,
So let's say, for example, in the summertime, the days are long. I made wudu for dhuhr, okay? And I wore socks. I prayed dhuhr immediately, 5 minutes after dhuhr, I broke my wudu. But then I didn't make wudu until Salat al-Asr was at 5:30 then. I didn't do it till 5:25. So I made wudu at 1 o'clock and I prayed at 1:30 in the masjid. I broke my wudu at 1:50. I didn't make my wudu with mesh until 5:28. That is when the 24 hours start. From 5:28 until 5:28 the next day. The same time. You have 24 hours from that time. If 5:28 comes the next day at that time, and I still have wudu, is my wudu broken because the time ends? Let's say I've made mesh the next day, and then 5:28 the next day came, the same time I first made mesh. Does that break my wudu? Do I have to make wudu again, take off my socks and make wudu because the time has ended?
yeah,
Yes.
because you have 24 hours. The time-
That's one opinion. No? Second opinion?
If your wuzu is broken, you have to make wuzu again.
No. So no. So those who said no, that's qawl rajih. If the time ends, that's not a naqid of wudu. That doesn't break wudu. You see? It's only if you break the wudu, then you cannot make masah again until you make wudu fully again. You have to remove the sock and make wudu again. Okay? But if the time, let's say for example, I made wudu at 5 o'clock the next day and I made masah. I'm still within the time, right? After Isha. I pray Maghrib and Isha. Make nothing. I don't need to make wudu again. Why? Because I've already made wudu. And if the time ends, it doesn't end, it doesn't break the wudu. The end of time does not break the wudu. Wadih? So again, in summary, the time that wiping of the socks starts, the 24 hours, if you're not a traveler, from the first time you wipe. Okay? Because let's say, for example, I made wudu at dhuhr time. Okay? I prayed every salah that day. I didn't need to go to the toilet, I didn't break wind, nothing. Nothing broke my wudu. Until I went to sleep. And I had the socks on still. I woke up for Fajr and then I made masah. It starts from then.
Even you slept.
Yeah. I haven't made mess yet. From the time you make masah. That's for someone who's not a traveler. For the one who's a traveler, it lasts for how long? 3 days.
But if you sleep like you deep sleep, I think you don't need to do proper wudu.
No, you make wudu, but I make masah. Because I have socks, so I slept in my socks. That's what I mean, I slept in my socks.
But you did have a.
Socks upon. That's what we're talking about. We put socks on after making wudu. I wipe over my sock. Khalas. Then the time starts from then. So whenever you actually wipe over your sock, that's when you count the time from. Okay? Regarding what it mentioned here, yes, it's still valid, yes. They said in the book that if you was traveling, the traveler of sin, you're traveling to sin, that you can only wipe for 1 day and 1 night, as if you're not traveling. But the correct opinion is that you still wipe as if you're a traveler. The correct opinion is still the rule of the traveler applies, whether you're traveling to do sin or traveling for something that is halal. There's something that I want to mention. Okay. It's very cold. It's very cold. So I'm wearing one sock. I've broke my wudu, I've made mess. Okay. But it's really cold. I made wudu and I made mess again. Okay, but it's so cold. I said I'm gonna wear another sock. I'm gonna put on another sock. Okay. And then I break my wudu. What do I have? The one that you put on and you wipe underneath the one that's underneath. You see? Because that is a sock that I made myself. So if I made wudu fully and then I put socks on, I broke my wudu, I made wudu again, and then I wiped over my socks. Okay? But then I got really cold, so I wore double socks. When I break my wudu, then what happens? I take off the one sock and wipe underneath the sock that's underneath it. Okay? Everyone with me?
What if you doubled up straight away?
If you doubled up straight away, you have to wipe over the top, the second sock. So if I doubled up, if I for example, I made wudu, I put on 2 socks, I broke wudu, I wipe over the second sock, not the one under. I don't take off one sock, I wipe over the second sock. Okay, but the situation that we mentioned here now, I made wudu in the morning before I was going to work. I put my socks on. I made wudu and I made mess of the one sock. After Asr, it got a bit nippy. So I went and bought thermal socks. And I wore the thermal socks on top of the socks that I made mess over. But now it's time for Maghrib and I broke my wudu. I broke my wudu before Maghrib. So I need to make wudu again. I have to take off the second pair of socks I put on and make mess on the sock that I wiped on. Okay. Another issue that's mentioned, if I made mess and I took off my socks, and then I put them back on again, if I break my wudu, I have to make wudu without the socks. So if you take off the socks, it doesn't break your wudu, it breaks the permissibility of you doing masah again. Clear?
Yeah.
So I wore the socks after making wudu. I broke my wudu, then I made the first time wudu wearing the socks, I made masah. But then I was like, you know, it's kind of hot, so I took off my socks. Okay? Some people don't like playing barefoot, so they put the socks back on. Okay? Same socks. But then they broke wudu. They need to make wudu again. They have to take off the socks. It doesn't break your wudu. There are some who say they take that opinion. If you take off the socks, it breaks the wudu, but there's no evidence for this. And some give the example, for example, if I made wudu and I had an afro, let's just say if I had an afro and I made wudu, I wiped over my hair. And then I shaved my hair bald, do I have to redo the wudu? Does that break my wudu? No. So the same way, if I take off the socks, it's not from the things that breaks your wudu. Now, of the main issues that we wanted to talk about in relation to this, the cast or a splint, the likes, these kind of things for an injury. In Arabic, it's called jabira. plaster, cast, bandage, all of these things. Someone asked about this last lesson, right? Was it you, Ramis? Not to point you out, you know what? I said I'll talk about it today. Another thing that is mentioned, okay, when it comes to bandages and the likes, if you're not able to take it off to make wudu because it will cause you harm or the likes, you wipe over it. Don't wipe like you wipe the socks, just the top, you wipe over all of it. So let's say, for example, I burnt my arm. Or not, I'm not going to say burnt because burnt is a bit of a sticky one. We'll talk about why in a minute. I have a cut on my arm, but I've got a bandage over the whole cut of my arm. I've got a bandage all over it. If it's not going to cause me harm, I wipe over the whole bandage. So wipe is not washing. I wet my hand and I wipe over the whole bandage. Okay? If I cannot wipe, because it's going to cause me harm, what do? I make tayammum. If I'm not able to wipe over where I have a bandage, I make tayammum. Okay. Now, you have those who mentioned the hadith about the one who had cut his head. This hadith is well known, right? And he was in a state of janaba. He asked if he can make tayammum, and he said, no, we don't see any concession for you. So he made wudu and then he died. Right? This hadith is da'if. This hadith is weak. It's not authentic. Okay. So it's mentioned, Bayhaqi rahimahullah said there's no authentic hadith regarding this at all. There's no hadith that is authentic that is mentioned regarding this topic at all. So regarding, some say the condition is, for example, to be able to wipe over it, you have to have been in a state of tahara before you put on the bandage. But let's say, for example, you had a car accident, you broke your arm from the shock, you passed a lot of wind, maybe more than this. We ask God to protect us from this. You have to make wudu before they can put you in a cast? La. So that condition we don't take as a condition. Also, for example, I'm coming for you, Sheikh. If someone had a burn, they burnt their skin. So if they were to put water, it will cause harm underneath the bandage. If they use water, it will cause them harm. They should do what? Make tayammum. They should make tayammum. They don't wipe. Okay. Also, when it comes to, let's say I broke my finger, or I have a cut that's only on my finger, but the bandage goes up to my wrist. I have to uncover everything but my finger and wash that part and only wipe over my finger, because there's nothing that is preventing me being able to wash this with my hand. You see? So if the bandage exceeds its place, then you have to remove the excession and then wash that area, and you only wipe over the area that needs to be wiped, i.e. the finger. So if I only have a cut on my finger, but the bandage goes all the way up to here, for example, some people are extreme, they put the bandage all the way up there, then I have to remove the bandage and only my finger should have bandage. And then, we've seen it, some people back in the days when we was in school, they cut a little part of the arm, but they got the bandage all the way up to the, but the issue is only here. No, you have to uncover all of this part and you leave the bandage only on this part. And you wipe this part and you wash everything else. Yeah, for example. The other thing to be mentioned regarding this that is similar is the imama. The imama, for example, if a person's wearing an imama, like a head wrap, like the one that you see they wear in the desert when it goes underneath your chin and it's difficult to take off and put back. it's permissible to wipe over that instead of your head. But if you have one that's fixed that you can take off and put it straight back on, you have to what? Take it off and wipe your head. They also mentioned for women that are wearing hijab, for example, if it's difficult for them to take it off and put it back on because of where they are and the likes, then they can wipe over it also. They can wipe over it also. As for, you know what, a lot of the students of knowledge, they wear the one that just comes, falls over, you cannot wipe over this. You cannot wipe over this. I cannot wipe over this hat. It comes on, wax off. Simple. So if that's the same, your imam is like that. Even if your imamah had loads of wraps, but it was sturdy, you can just lift it off your head and drop it back on. You have to take it off. You cannot make mash. واضح? Regarding the last thing to mention, if you wear socks, if a person wears 2 socks and has not broken wudu yet, then they wipe over the top sock. That's the first circumstance. I made wudu, I put on 2 socks. When I break wudu now, I wipe over the top sock. I don't have to take off one. I leave both of them on and wipe over the top sock. I wore 1 sock. And then, after I made wudu, I wore 1 sock. Then I broke my wudu and I put on another sock. I have to remove the top sock and wipe over the first sock that I put on. Okay, that's the second circumstance. The third circumstance is technical, yeah, but it's easy as well to understand. They mention if you wore a sock over a sock after breaking wudu, after making wudu. Basically, I made wudu, I broke wudu, I made wudu again, and then I put on socks. Both 2 socks. Okay, some say you have to take off 1 sock and wipe over that, but no, you can wipe over both socks again. The top sock. If, for example, it mentions if a person wears a sock over a sock before breaking wudu, then after 12 hours have gone by. We said the period is 12 hours if you're not traveling. 12 hours have gone by, and then you take off 1 pair of socks, the top pair of socks. The second pair of socks, you take it off. Some say you're not allowed to wipe over the bottom sock. But the Sheikh Sa'ad Khafran, Hafidullah, he mentions, no, it's permissible for you to wipe over that you have put on. Okay?
If you wear one on the top.
Aslim Taslim. Yeah. So if I wore 2 socks, لبست خفين وبعد نصف المدة خلعت إحداهما بعد قال لا يجوز المحس على التحتاني، ولكن الراجح جواز المسح على التحتاني. واضح؟ نعم. So better to take off the socks or wipe over the socks?
Wipe over the socks.
Wipe over the socks.
MashaAllah.
Why is that? What's the evidence?
Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Allah proves to say you can do it. You can't break His law.
If Allah
I think
give a
wudu as well is
concession,
the law of
Allah loves that you take His concessions, just as He hates that His concessions, as He hates that you disobey Him. So it's more preferred that you do what? Take the concession.
So is that a qaida?
No. Some will use it as a qaida, as why that is the preferred opinion.
The Rafida as well, they don't do that.
Rafida, they don't believe in mas al-khaffain.
So it's
That's why the wiping over the socks, the Shia do not believe in this at all. And that's why in the books of i'tiqad, of the belief of the Muslim, it mentions the fiqh issue of wiping over the socks. Wiping over the socks, why? Because this is the difference between the Rafida or Ahl Sunnah. No. Someone asked, for sisters wearing abaya, they break their wudu while in a public place. Are we allowed to wipe over our arm instead of removing the abaya? Wallahu alam. Wallahu alam. I would say if you can go to a bathroom and you can raise your arm, in general, if you cannot raise like this and you're wearing an abaya, this is a problem. If you're wearing an abaya and it's too tight for you to raise it like this is a problem. Because the asl is that the woman's clothing has to be what? Fadfad, and it has to be wide, spacious. So if it is too tight for you to lift like this, for you to go to a public toilet or something like this where it's for women only, we ask Allah to maintain women only and men only toilets. Allahumma ameen. Yeah. Otherwise, from next week we're going to go through Fiqh of Siyam. From next Tuesday we'll start Fiqh of and meet Ramadan, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to reach Ramadan, that we reach it upon knowledge, inshallah ta'ala. But that's what we want to share benefit regarding the socks, and other than this, the cast, the bandage and the likes.
Question only about our Prophet mentioned in
Sallallahu
the hadith about na'alaykum. You can do wudu on the top of your shoe.
Yes, he used to do that.
Sometimes I'm in rush because Maghrib is just 5 minutes, 4 minutes, yeah? So I have to pray and I have wudu. I have to do masah on the shoe or no? I have wudu already, for example.
Allah alam, again, that he looks into.
Inshallah.
No. That one we look into that one, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Afwan, inshallah. سبحانك وبحمدك لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك. السلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته.